And we continue at 1:05 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
Charles writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and says, if I hear another politician tell me that we're all in this together, I'm going to lose my lunch. We're in this situation because Ricardo Lara is incompetent and more interested in guaranteeing insurance company profits than providing affordable home insurance for us. He seems to be bending over backwards to allow the insurance companies to make a killing while the rest of us go broke. Lara is a totally incompetent turd.
We live in a one-party state where he ran for re-election as insurance commissioner as a Democrat. So no one was going to beat him. Just wasn't in the cards. Now that he's termed out, he's going to have to run for some other office. My guess is that he runs for lieutenant governor or for the LA County Board of Supervisors. If he does that, he'll have to run against other Democrats, at least in the primary. I don't think Ricardo Lara makes it. I think this is the last stop on the subway for him.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
I could be wrong, and voters in this state never cease to disappoint me. But if given the option of someone that didn't destroy an entire industry, I think Democratic voters will take that over him. Just a hunch. I guess we'll find out in due time. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the Republican National Committeeman for the RNC, representing the state of California. You can get him online at ShawnSteel.com. Shawn Steel, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. Still in D.C. It's cold, but it's hot. We're at the airport, ready to take off from the Ronald Reagan Airport. How does that sound?
Well, if you're flying American, it sounds delayed.
No, luckily it's Delta. There's so many airlines I want to boycott because of their DEI behavior, their anti-Trump behavior, when they decided to boycott the Georgia Republicans in Atlanta on the World Series. But you run out of airlines, and then you're hitchhiking.
So yesterday was the big speech. I watched it here at home on television, and I've got to say, I love the fact that Trump just went out there and took a bite at the apple, where you had Kamala sitting there, you had Biden sitting there, you had the former president sitting there, and he talked about all of the failures of what's going on in the country and how he's going to dig us out of the hole. I like that he didn't beat around the bush. He just went right for it.
John, that was the understated, pleasant, positive, optimistic Lincoln-esque speech. Then he gave a real speech below in another room that he really wanted to say, and then he got serious by signing dozens and dozens of executive orders that directly, immediately impact California. But the best news of all, of course, he may be coming out to California in about a week, he says, and you will see serious skid marks on Gavin Newsom's knees, the like of which we have never seen in California. And any aid whatsoever coming to California, there will be not just a couple of strings on it, but a bouquet of strings of requirements that California is going to actually have to spend the money on improving wildfire protection. The first, of course, executive order is putting people over fish. Did you ever think you would see that? That even surprised me. Now, the Delta smelt is going to have to join the 99% of all species on Earth and disappear. We're going to start paying Boy Scouts a bonus, a bounty each time they find one. They're impossible to find, but if they can find one and fry it and cook it, sooner we get rid of that fish, 2 million gallons of fresh water will no longer be pumped in the Pacific Ocean each day. It's literally a crime against human beings. That ends now.
Here's what I think is going to happen if they just give Newsom and Karen Bass a blank check without strings. They're going to take that money, and it's going to go to everything except the fire victims. What they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, look at all the illegal aliens who were displaced because they worked in these areas. Let's give the money to the organizations that advocate for illegal aliens. And, oh, how about the homeless? Some of the homeless encampments burned down. Let's give money to the phony baloney homeless organizations. And, oh, look, the library burned. So let's set aside money for Drag Queen Story Hour.
Not only that, how do you spend $1.2 billion a year to solve the homeless problem in L.A. County, and yet it gets worse? And here's how you do it. Here's the secret. All these fine millennial, X-generation students going to universities and taking sociology degrees, they get the job of $100,000 a year for working to make homelessness better and make it more attractive. Most of that money never goes to the homeless, fire victims, or any type of victim. It goes to the bureaucracy. It's an 80-20 principle. 80% of that $1.2 billion City of LA went to salaries. And, of course, they're not going to fix the problem. Their livelihoods depend on having a problem.
When Trump comes to California later this week to meet with local officials to survey the fire damage that has taken place here in Southern California, what type of interaction do you think he's going to have with Newsom? And I say that because those two have gotten along one-on-one in the past. Maybe from afar they go at it with one another. But when they had to work together on fires in Northern California, they seem to have a pretty good working relationship. But this time around, the posturing has been far more aggressive, with Newsom right out of the gate blaming Trump for the fires and Trump returning fire. What do you think is going to happen this week?
Well, first of all, we're going back to the Paradise Fire. Very little of the housing has been restored or rebuilt, mainly because of the bureaucracy and the people that are getting fat salaries to make sure that nothing gets built anywhere at any time. And then it was Trump, who I don't usually call prescient, but he said, if you don't know how to do forest management and use the water properly, you're going to have more of these. Now, true enough, he's come back. It's going to be basically a one-sided discussion. Newsom's going to be on his knees because he knows the federal bailouts are not going to be what it was under Biden. So he's going to have to accept the following. Sanctuary jurisdictions are going to have to go. What does that have to do with fire victims? Everything, because it's federal taxpayer money. Environmental regulations requiring EV vehicles to be purchased, that's going to have to go. Real water management, absolutely, it has to go for fire retardation. It has to go to urban dwellers. It has to go to agriculture. It's not for environmental purposes. Immigration at the border absolutely has to cooperate. Any city or state that doesn't cooperate will be sued, and it's a violation of federal law. Healthcare has to go to American citizens. Education, the anti-Semitism in the universities is out of control, state universities. The DEI nonsense that we're getting in public schools, that's going to have to go. So just a few little changes like that. I'm sure that the anti-Trump legislation that Newsom just had passed is going to have to be retired and forgotten, or otherwise it's going to be a very cold day in Sacramento.
In the old days, when Newsom would go to Washington wanting money, the Speaker of the House at one point in time was a fellow Californian, Nancy Pelosi. When the Speaker of the House is arguing on your behalf, my guess is having a powerful friend is helpful when you're going to the White House and trying to negotiate some kind of package. Nancy Pelosi is no longer Speaker of the House. Speaker of the House is Speaker Johnson, who is a Republican, not from the state of California. How much does that hurt Gavin Newsom when he goes to Washington and tries to make demands?
Well, it's just not Michael Johnson. It's the Republicans in Congress in both houses. One of the things that absolutely has to go is the internationally laughable bullet trains. You've talked about it. Nope. I would bet if there was a vote on that, it would be maybe 20% support, 80% cut it off. It's the biggest failure of infrastructure by a government agency in California history. It's the shame and the embarrassment of how little it accomplished and how much it cost, when you should be building dams and conserving water and embracing desalination plants up and down California. But, of course, the Coastal Commission's against that. Anything that will help human beings, literally anything that will help human beings versus some amorphous goal, the Democrats go against the human race.
Let's go back to the speeches yesterday, because you are in Washington, D.C. right now. You were there for the inauguration yesterday. Joe Biden got dropped as the Democratic nominee because he's essentially, well, Nancy Pelosi determined that he was too old and too feeble to campaign around the country effectively, and they all thought he was going to lose, and they wanted to replace him. President Trump is younger than former President Biden, but not by much. But when you look at him giving those speeches yesterday, hopping from spot to spot, alert as ever, late at night, he was up early in the morning. I think he only gets 4 hours of sleep. What type of energy did he have in person as you were there watching these speeches live? Because on television, he looked like the Energizer Bunny.
He is, and got to be careful about making somebody seem like Superman, but you know, he doesn't drink alcohol, he doesn't drink coffee, he doesn't drink tea. So a lot of those liquids have been used by lots of people, and usually not, you know, if it's prolonged and excessive, it's not healthy. So he seems to have an innate health style, despite the fact that he really loves McDonald's. And by the way, one of the balls, he had an entire frame up where you could take a picture next to him in McDonald's. It was a nice setup, and then one with a garbage truck, and then one with him in jail. So the sense of humor that he has is a big part of it. But that press conference was amazing to behold. You saw the cameras really almost in his face, maybe 30 or 40 of them. He's signing executive orders that have been thought about and worked on for months and months, changing America virtually overnight with a very good left hook. And at the same time, he's answering complicated questions for 45 minutes and very thoughtful answers. And there's things that he didn't want to speak about. So he's really become a much more finessed president this time, and he's very comfortable in Washington because he's got his team is 1,000% better than it was 8 years ago.
When he was president the first time, the Democrat in Congress that he worked with the most was Joe Manchin, the Democratic senator from the state of West Virginia. West Virginia, of course, is a heavily Republican state that voted for Trump 3 times, and Joe Manchin understood that, so he benefited from working with President Trump. This time around, Joe Manchin is no longer in the United States Senate. Which Democrat do you think is going to be the go-to Democrat for Trump to work with on legislation or when he needs to pull votes from the other side of the aisle? Is it going to be John Fetterman?
John Fetterman of Pennsylvania is clearly has a much bigger constituency and a much bigger, less opportunistic reputation than Joe Manchin. And keep in mind, the Republicans have a solid 3-seat 6-vote margin. This is a big deal in this U.S. Senate. I hope we can keep the House. But John Fetterman is a clear independent. He's flown down to Mar-a-Lago. He's made it clear he makes more sense in Israel than half the Republicans. It's funny. Everybody assumed that he was out of it, brain dead, could not recover from it. But in fact, it was a great recovery. And now we see the real man that he is. He's clearly one of the best Democrats in America, and he'll be a great, not all the time, but if he's there 40, 50% of the time, that's a breakthrough, and that hurts the Democrats.
In a weird sort of way, he's kind of like the Democrat Trump because he's a disruptor. He doesn't talk like the rest of them. He doesn't abide by their rules. He kind of does his own thing, and the people back at home like him so he can get away with it.
Well, not only that, I like the way he dresses. Trump dresses a lot better. But this man walks in with I don't know, with a sweatshirt and shorts, and it's not very attractive. He doesn't care. But what comes out of his mouth and what he says, he's made a lot of friends on the right. We just wish we had more Republicans as gutsy and as perceptive as him.
How freezing is it right now in Washington, D.C.?
It's in the single digits. I don't know what that means. To me, this kind of weather doesn't belong. John, some people think I'm a little extreme on climate, but I've been worried about global cooling since the 1970s, and I haven't changed my mind. That is, more people die of cold than they do of heat, and so we're doing something about it. We're taking action, what my ancestors did. We're getting the hell out of the East Coast and getting to California.
Well, people forget this, but Washington, D.C. is not really the Northeast. It's the South. And not only is it freezing right now in Washington, D.C., but I saw on the news that it was snowing on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. It's snowing in Galveston, Texas. It's snowing on the beach in Florida. It's snowing all over the South.
There's more snow in New Orleans than there is in Mammoth Mountain. So, I think we have a serious issue that we shouldn't just walk away from. And so this global cooling is, whatever's causing that's a big problem.
There is now officially more white powder on the streets of New Orleans than in Hunter Biden's glove compartment.
Yep. Well, that says a lot.
Shawn Steel, RNC committeeman representing the state of California. You can get him online at ShawnSteel.com. Shawn, thanks so much for stopping by, and have a safe trip back home to the warmth.
Lots of fun, and not only is America changing, but California is going to get some help. Help is on the way.
All right. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Johnny, this email comes all the way from Australia. Phil writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and says, "Good day from down under. John and Randy, dropping you a line to say that I am listening online right now from Sydney, Australia, and I love what you guys do. Your show lands on the East Coast 7 to 10 a.m. the next day, which is perfect for my daily schedule, which means I have dropped our local #1 talk breakfast show and instead listened to the John Phillips Show. I found the John Phillips Show as I watched firsthand news about the LA fire, so I Googled LA's #1 talk station, and if there's one country that knows firsthand about devastation caused by wildfires, it's Australia, as literally half of our country was on fire during the summer of 2019 to 2020. Our hearts go down under, really out to the LA people, and we pray the situation is controlled soon and that LA can rebuild ASAP. I'm a political junkie of the conservative right and love your humor and sticking it to the woke left. We don't have your kind of radio show here, and it is truly a breath of fresh air. Australia is governed by a left, woke, obsessed political party supported hand in glove by the majority of the so-called mainstream media. We have our national election due here in the next few months and cannot wait to follow the USA in dumping our elitist lefty politicians from power. While you guys were away yesterday, I caught up with your rich treasure trove of podcasts. The Drops of 2024 competition was truly gold. I thought we had some political weirdos here in Oz, but they're nothing compared to what California has suffered, of course, including Shangy, Newsom, and Karen Bass, just to name a few. Guys, I absolutely love your work and will spread the word down under to get my friends and team to check out the John Phillips Show. I wish you a great and prosperous year for the show, and of course, I will be rooting for the Oakland Bees!
Oakland Bees!
Fun fact, I was actually in Australia in December of 2019 when the outback was on fire, and the whole time I was in Sydney, I felt like I was on Mars. It was just orange the whole time, and it smelled like a barbecue.
Not the good kind.
You notice that every time I go on vacation, there's some kind of disaster?
Yes.
And then we got on the ship and went to New Zealand, and that's when the volcano erupted.
You are cursed, my friend.
Thankfully, I was not harmed by the volcano. There were other people from the ship who were. I was not one of them. All right. If you were to go back and listen to that podcast of the drops of 2024, Randy, that's easy to do.
Oh, it is quite the competition. Spoiler alert.
I said, hell no, baby boy. Let me get up on out of here.
That was the clear winner. But go to KABC.com, click on podcast, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do what the second most popular drop of the year says to do.
Do a Google on YouTube.
Remember that guy?
It feels like he's been gone for a million years already.
Or get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station. Download all the podcasts, including the origin story of our third favorite drop from the year.
Give me back my jacket.
And Randy, we're on the move in the San Francisco Bay.
So this is really cool. We do the Fix California Hour weeknights at 11 on KSFO in the Bay Area. KSFO moved to AM 810, which is a bigger, stronger signal. You can hear it all throughout Northern California. At night, when other stations power down, you can hear it in other states, sometimes in other countries. Hey, maybe you get it in Australia. Don't know. But the cool thing for you is you can get it right here in Southern California. So set a preset next to 790 and set it for 810 and listen to the Fix California Hour on a station that's in a market that doesn't care if you're listening.
Well, a regular member of the cast hasn't appeared on this program in a long time. And Randy, she's back with a vengeance.
Yes, because it's a year where a union contract is up. So Cecily Mayart Cruz, the head of United Teachers Los Angeles, one of the most powerful power brokers there is in the state of California, she decided now is the perfect time to take over an LAUSD school board meeting to announce she has conditions to completely destroy everything over getting even more money.
Get that money.
She has a plan to take care of the babies.
She does love her babies.
Our babies.
This was at last week's LAUSD board meeting. I'm going to skip past the first 2 minutes of her condoling the fire victims and go straight to Cecily saying that she needs more cashola.
So I am Cecily Mayart Cruz,
We know.
We're very familiar with your work.
the president of United Teachers Los Angeles, and I want...
Who gave that a woo?
You notice she started out with her indoor voice, and that lasted exactly how many seconds?
So I am Cecily Mayart Cruz, the president of United Teachers Los Angeles.
Yes.
And I want to talk about my disappointment, and I've had times of rage.
Oh, boy.
We've heard it.
And I want you to be all the way pissed off.
If she's starting the speech that way, there's only one way for this to go.
Over the course. I've spoken to some of y'all, but I stand here in disappointment and frustration and urgency.
She's getting louder.
Yes, she is. It's building.
Coming to you today, speaking on behalf of 38,000 educators of LAUSD, but our school communities. Once again, when faced with a crisis, district leadership failed.
Oh, my.
Can you imagine if you got a 55% on a spelling test in her class?
Failed.
Well, I got to save that.
She'd be out there with a red pen.
Failed.
Hey, John, how would you grade the teachers of UTLA in getting students to graduate?
Not passing.
Failed.
Hey, Randy, any guesses on how I did on my first driver's exam?
Failed.
Might need to double that one.
To move proactively or consider the safety and health of the community. A response unacceptable and inadequate for the nation's second largest district.
What is she trying to advocate for? Is she pissed that the whole district didn't go on Zoom school when the fires were happening?
I think so.
She does love that Zoom school. She kept that going longer than any other district in the whole country.
You know, when Gavin Newsom starts talking fast, sometimes he explodes. I think she's getting ready to erupt like a volcano.
After the delays in decision making that we saw this week from the district, and after once again seeing and hearing the voices of parents, students, educators, education workers.
She's pissed she had to work during the fires.
I think that's true.
Folks on the ground.
Me too, lady. Me too.
Hashtag.
Folks on the ground doing the work, they were ignored. It should come as no surprise to anyone that United Teachers Los Angeles is announcing our intent to sunshine our collective bargaining agreement with LAUSD.
Oh, we all knew that was happening, honey. You do not let a contract stay. This is another opportunity to get even more money for a failing institution.
She gets every drop of juice out of the squeeze.
And for some reason, it was left off the docket. I can get into that later. We sent a letter last week on...
I love how passive-aggressive she is.
On Thursday.
Well, usually she's just aggressive.
On Thursday, January 9th, notifying the district in accordance with the Education Employment Relations Act to our demand to bargain a successor agreement. UTLA's agreement with LAUSD expires this summer.
It's going to be a loud summer, everybody.
You notice it's never, hey, let's get together and collaborate. Let's get together and negotiate. Let's get together and try to hammer out a deal. We demand this and we demand that, and that's how it's going to be.
And instead of doing this privately with an email or a phone call to Alberto Carvalho, she has to scream it at a public meeting where the number one concern is the damn fires.
Yeah, and she sounds like a pro wrestler trying to sell out the Staples Center.
Woo! I bet she watches wrestling videos in anticipation for these fights.
Well, one of the things that the wrestlers do when they cut promos is they call each other by their last names. Hogan, it's coming your way. Somebody's going to get hurt. Woo!
She does call him Carvalho.
Expires this summer, and we will not wait quietly while...
You don't do anything quietly, lady.
I don't think she sleeps quietly.
While our schools, educators, and community continue to be left unsupported and unprioritized. This past week itself is not the reason why, nor what prompted it, but it remains...
No, she was going to be pissed whether the city burned down or not.
Being pissed is due north for her.
But it remains a reflection and yet another example of districts' leadership lack of communication and failures to consider the needs, physical, mental health, and safety of our entire school communities.
So funny she's so concerned about safety. Hasn't her prime demand for the past two negotiations been that she wants to get rid of the LAUSD police?
Yes.
The district continues to hold on to more than $6 billion in reserves.
That's her money. That's not your money. That's Cecily money.
And don't think about spending it on one-time expenditures either. It needs to go into salary.
Cecily needs that money so she can prop up the campaigns of people like Ricardo Lara when he runs for his next office.
Enough to pay educators fairly. Enough to maintain safe, healthy environments. Enough to provide the resources our students need. Excuses don't hold up when we see money sitting there while it could be invested in our students, our classrooms, our schools, and the people who work there every day.
Give her that money now.
Now, I'm not a professional education administrator, but I would imagine if you have reserves, those are there for a rainy day. Those are there when the budget is not balanced. That money is there for, I don't know, there's an earthquake and suddenly you have to repair damaged buildings. Those sorts of things.
You mean like the schools that actually burnt down last week?
Yes, that money would be appropriate to use for something like that. But if you just give it to your current employees in the form of pay raises, what's the point of even having a reserve?
Well, then they can raise taxes to get even more money that then she can ask for even more money for.
It is about priorities. It is about compassion. We talk about pillar 2 as the joy and wellness pillar. I am not.
I don't even know where she's going with this now.
Me either.
I am not.
But this is not joy.
I am not seeing that. It's about basic human empathy and caring about the needs of the people you serve. Pillar.
She ran out of breath there.
Yeah, well, I don't blame her.
Caring about the needs of the people you serve. Pillar 5.
Also, she's either got some bangle on or she's got some necklace on, but I keep hearing jingling throughout her whole tirade here.
Maybe she's just jingling the coins in her pocket.
Pillar 5.
You know, she appreciates the kinds that fold, not the kinds that jingle.
That's true.
Pillar 5. Investing in your staff. And as demonstrated this week in those realms, the district is failing us. The district, time and time again.
So 3 years ago, you got this guy to bend over backwards, and you got everything you asked for and more. You asked for a 20% raise. He gave you a 21% raise. And now here we are 2 years later. He's screwing us over.
She's publicly declaring the man to be a dirtbag.
The district, time and time again, demonstrates to Los Angeles that we can't wait. It's up to us.
Of course. Why wait for an actual disaster when I can start screaming in here like a tornado?
She's getting louder.
It's up to us, along with our...
This isn't a speech. This isn't a rally. This is a board meeting.
It's up to us, along with our colleagues and union siblings, and here up and down the state to win our vision for the future of our schools. UTLA members are committed to fighting for educator.
Has she even said yet what her demands are?
No, she just told them how disappointed she is in them, and then she's been berating them ever since.
UTLA members are committed to fighting for educator recruitment, retention, and support through better access.
Okay, so you know what that is? She sees that in order to retain police officers, we're putting out those bonuses where if you decide to unretire or transfer, we're going to pay you. She wants that for UTLA.
Oh, dear.
Through better access to mental wellness supports, equity across positions.
What does that mean?
I don't know what it means, but it's probably not good.
Protection of educator rights, increased salaries to attract.
We want to make sure that even if a teacher is caught molesting kids, that nothing will happen to them.
They still need their pension, too.
What do you think that rubber room is for?
Increased salaries to attract and retain educators.
There it is.
That's always what she's talking about.
You know, I wish my union fought this hard. They got a 20% raise 2 years ago, and now she wants another 20% raise.
And she's going to get it, too.
We demand higher pay, support for new educators with additional investment in BIPOC, multilingual, and immigrant educators.
What?
Boy, she's just checking all the boxes.
Smaller class sizes, smaller caseload ratios.
So you want more money to do less work.
And by the way, enrollment in that district is in free fall. Nobody's having babies, and the people who are not putting them in the public school.
Smaller class sizes, smaller caseload ratios, support for special education, fully...
You heard it right here. Alberto Carvalho hates disabled kids.
Boy, she's leaving no stone unturned.
Fully staffed schools, including aides, custodian, and more. So,
Not that kind of AIDS.
No.
Including aides, custodian, and more.
Just the one custodian?
He's really productive with his time.
Including aides, custodian, and more. Support for students, parents, and school communities.
What does that even mean?
I'm not sure. School communities, I guess, would mean students, parents, classified personnel, everyone at the district?
We're going to pay you to send your kid to LAUSD.
Through increased investment in community schools, protection and...
That's not a word. That's nothing. Every school is in a community.
Protection and expansion of the Black Student Achievement Plan.
What's that? How about the Latino student? Do they have an achievement plan? The Asian student? The Pacific Islander student?
Let's see if they get an honorable mention.
And ethnic studies. More support for students' mental health. More support for immigrant students and newcomers, English language learners, LGBTQIA plus students and staff.
Boy, that acronym's gotten real long.
I think that's the longest I've ever heard it.
What's the plus for?
Play that again.
LGBTQIA plus students and staff.
I only know what some of those letters are for.
LGBTK, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. What was the next one?
LGBTQI.
Q.
That's queer, I think.
QI.
I.
I think that's intersex.
A.
A plus.
I don't know.
Plus.
Plus.
Is that with HIV?
I would certainly hope not.
I don't know.
What if they're on the cocktail?
Google it on the YouTube.
Oh, boy. I don't want my search history to come up with this. All right. What is the plus in, all right. The plus sign represents gender and sexual identities that are not included in the acronym's first letters.
Okay, so that has nothing to do with AIDS.
As far as we know.
TQIA plus student.
Okay, what about the A? What does that mean?
Okay, let's look up the A. What is the A in? Well, there it is. First thing that popped up here. The A stands for asexual. If you don't like anybody, you get your own letter.
Well, wait a minute. How is that its own separate category? They're just people that just aren't that motivated sexually. They're called married people.
Students and staff. Students and families facing homelessness, especially in light of this newest disaster. Campus safety through support and not criminalization.
That means she wants to defund the LAUSD police again.
They did that the last contract cycle.
They can defund them more.
Free early education for all. Support for college and career preparation. Healthy and clean green public schools, including clean and safe drinking water. Facilities upgrades.
Well, how do we have that when the students like to put up videos on TikTok of them ripping out the water fountains?
They don't even have that in Pacific Palisades now.
Facilities upgrades, green spaces, shade, and playgrounds on every school campus. Programs and policies for environmental justice, climate resilience.
Whoops. I think she just swallowed her tongue.
Yeah.
Climate resilience.
She didn't stroke out, did she?
She started to malfunction there for a second.
Climate resilience. And, yes, proactive procedures for disaster preparedness.
As in, I say so when the schools shut down, and I think the schools need to be shut down for another 2 years.
If she could, she would have shut all the schools down due to the fire. All right, we've got one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show. When we return, we're going to check in with Hawaii Representative Ellie Cochran. She represented Lahaina when they experienced their fires, and we have a lot to learn from her, and she'll be here in moments, right here on the John Phillips Show. Talk Radio 790 KABC.